Hey guys, how's it going? It's Dopebear here. I just wanted to go through my skills of my Barbarian in Diablo 3. Do note I do only play softcore, not hardcore, so typically some skills will be different for probably all classes. If you're playing hardcore, you probably want to play more safely and pick more defensive skills. But I'd just like to go through what I would personally pick and choose in softcore. Um, I haven't played a lot of Barbarian as such. I think only about 70 hours or so. But ever since I've played it, I haven't pretty much stopped. It's been most of the only class I've been playing. And it's been going really well. So, first off, for my left mouse button, I'd pretty much always stuck with Frenzy. If you haven't hit 60 or so yet, you won't have Maniac. You could use Sidearm. This is a really popular choice, especially if you have quite low DPS, because this can up your DPS quite a bit in comparison to Maniac, whereas Maniac takes advantage of somewhat high DPS since it increases it by 20% if you have 5 stacks of Frenzy. But not only that, Frenzy is even great with life on hit modifiers since it has a huge haste of 75% increased attack speed if you have 5 stacks. And the damage per swing is quite nice of 110% of your wet weapon damage every hit. So that's pretty much just a given. I hear some people use Bash. Cleave is apparently good if you're leveling. But Bash, some of them are I don't use Bash, but some of them are good. You might want to consider. Like Clobber is good for normal and Nightmare, because bosses can be stunned by proc stuns. But in Hell and Inferno, they can't be stunned by this. But it's good to level up in normal and Nightmare. For my right mouse button, I like to use something that is quite a burst or a nuke damage, and even if it's consistent, like Furious Charge. Some people like to use a high cooldown or something you rarely use, like Ignore Pain, for example, or Wrath of the Berserker on your right mouse button. But personally, I always have stuck to Merciless Assault. The cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds for every target you hit. Now, of course, this includes enemies, but this also includes destructible environment like bones, crates, barrels, anything that you hit will reduce the cooldown by 2 seconds for each target. So when you use this charge and you hit at least 5 targets, the cooldown will be completely refreshed and you can use it the exact same again. And this generates 15 fury for every single target hit. And the cooldown's only 10 seconds, but yet again with this passive, or rune, sorry, it can be 0, and you can use it 5 times within 5 seconds, even if you wanted to, if you hit at least 5 targets every single time. Another very good choice, for example, as I said before, for hardcore, would be Dreadnought. Now, Dreadnought, you regain 8% of your max life every single target hit. Now, this is really good in hardcore because if you don't have a revenge proc up and like the revenge is just not happening, your potions are down, or potions don't heal for much anyways, you have like 50,000 plus HP, you want Dreadnought, because late game in Inferno you want percent of life healed, not a flat static amount like potions. So yeah, if just revenge isn't happening and you need like an ability with an extra heal, Furious Charge with Dreadnought is great. If you're not going to use Charge, another alternative would be Leap. Now Leap, if you want defensive, would be Iron Impact. It quadruples your armor for 4 seconds, and that's quite huge considering the cooldown is 10 seconds. So literally 40% of the time you can essentially have quadruple your armor. So that's really nice for defensive, but for offensive, you could use Death from Above. It's pretty much an AoE 3-second stun. This is diminished hard in Inferno, for example, because in Inferno, if you were to use this stun on elites in Inferno, they would only be stunned for 80% of the said time. So instead of them being stunned for 3 seconds, they'll only be stunned for 0.6 seconds. So that's something to consider. Don't think it'll stun elites for 3 seconds. But so yeah, I just use Furious Charge with Merciless Assault all the time. I find it to be utterly amazing for huge groups and just consistent AoE damage, since it does 195% weapon damage. And yeah, it generates fury, which synergizes with my passive, with one of my passives, which I'll go on later on. For my one key, if I'm progressing or leveling, or even in a party, I would always use Ignore Pain. This pretty much makes you immune for 5 seconds, but it is on a 30-second cooldown, so it doesn't seem to be as good as, say, Leap with Iron Impact. But I'd personally always use Ignorance is Bliss. You gain 20% lifesteal, and yes, this is also diminished hard in Inferno. This is diminished by 80%, just like Crowd Control in Inferno. This is different between Hell and Nightmare, but in Inferno, yes, it's 80%, so you only gain 4% lifesteal, but that is great, because if you crit, for example, with a couple frenzy hits, you'll be back to full health within 2 hits, depending on how hard you crit, of course, because it also depends on your DPS. But yeah, Ignore Pain if you're leveling and progressing. Even on hardcore, you'd probably want to pick this because it's purely defensive. If I'm farming, for example, Act 1 and 2, I'd want to, most of the time, pick Battle Rage with Marauder's Rage. This gives you 3% crit chance, which is decent, and with this rune, increases your overall damage by 30%. So let's say you have a flat amount of DPS, just add 30% extra to that. And this is what this this Battle Rage does. It costs 20 Fury, so with my passive, yet again, which I'll go into later on, it can cost quite a bit of Fury. Another thing I'd like to point out is don't mash it, because this, I believe, has no cooldown. So if you're in a battle in the fray and you press it, say, even twice, you'll spend 40 Fury instead of the 120 Fury. So just press it once and just be done with it, because some people like to spam their abilities to make sure it works, but I'd highly suggest to not ever do it with this, because otherwise you'll just lose a whole heap of unnecessary spent Fury. You'd always, now this is cookie cutter for every barbarian, you'd want to use Warcry. It generates 30 Fury, so this is great with Battle Rage, because you pop Warcry then Battle Rage, and you have both instantly, because Warcry gives you 30 Fury, but Battle Rage only costs 20 Fury, so you have 10 left over, but at least you can pay for it instantly. The cooldown is 30 seconds, but it always lasts for 60 seconds. Unless there's I think there's a rune that can increase it by another minute, but I don't think anyone uses that. This will always increase your armor by 20%. That alone is quite nice, since it's pretty much always up. So it's essentially like a passive, you just got to keep on remembering to use it. But not only this, it's amazing in parties because it affects all of your allies within 50 yards. Now this isn't like a mantra where they have to be within your range to have their benefit. They can be near you when you cast Warcry, and then they can be somewhere else nowhere near you and still have that this Warcry benefit for a whole minute. They just have to be near you when you cast it, unlike mantras have to be near you all the time. Now Warcry, pretty much everyone would use Impunity, because it increases all of your resistances by 50%. So if you have, say, 1,000 all resistances, or at least on average, all of that is increased by half, by 50%. So you will now have, for example, an average of 1,500 or 1,500 all resistances. But this also heavily depends if you're in a party. If you're solo, you'd pretty much always want to use Impunity because you're a barbarian. But if you're with other people, if you're, say, with witch doctors or demon hunters, you would want to use Veteran's Warning, which gives you, not only yourself, but also all of your party members dodge chance, because they're not going to want a tiny bit of all resistance. Instead of 200 all resistance, they'll have, say, 300 all resistance. They're still probably going to get one shot, maybe even two shot, but at least it's dodge chance. They would want things that are either immunity or to completely dodge a whole attack. This is what they would want. So if you're with demon hunters or just really squishy people regardless of their class, which is typically demon hunters, you would want Veterans Warning. Not sure about the other ones too much. You pretty much wouldn't want to use Charge. Hardened Wrath doesn't look too good. Invigorate seems okay, but to me it's either Impunity, because that alone is essential in a tanky party, or your solo, or Veteran's Warning. Now this is another cookie cutter for Barbarians. You'd always want to use Revenge. Revenge is just amazing. Base, it has a 15% chance to proc each time you're hit by anything. This can be like poison pools on the ground, this can be ranged attacks, melee attacks, any kind of damage you take from enemies. It has a chance to proc. See, right now it's greyed out. It doesn't have a it does have a 1 second cooldown, and another thing I'd like to point out, attack speed does not increase or decrease the cooldown. It's always 1 second. But it doesn't cost anything or doesn't generate anything. Inflicts 220% weapon damage to all nearby enemies, and you heal for 5% of your max life for every single enemy hit. So if you hit, say, 10 enemies with this Revenge, you will heal for half of your max life from that one hit. So it's really good sustain and also quite huge damage, because 220% of your weapon damage in quite a decent AoE. I'm not sure the exact yard radius, but it's quite good. And I've heard like auto attacking as well, that the yard radius is increased depending on your weapon. So if I'm using for example a mace and a sword, I would apparently have less range than someone who is using, say, a two-handed sword or a two-handed mace. Apparently, this doesn't seem to be fact. I'm not too sure yet, but I haven't looked too much into two-handed weapons myself, so they could give more range, but it's just something I've heard. So yeah, the rune, once you hit, I think you need to be level 59 or so to actually get this rune. It just increases the proc chance to 30%. That difference from 15% to 30% is actually huge. Instead of it being quite an inconsistent and like worrisome chance, it's actually quite a consistent, and in fights it's pretty much always up. So you're always healing, always doing great AoE damage. So yeah, the other runes, if you're leveling, that you could want to consider, I'd personally use Best Served Cold, because it increases your crit chance by 10% for 12 seconds. That's quite nice. Or Retribution, which just increases the damage the Revenge deals by quite a considerable amount. But yeah, when you hit level 59 or so to get this rune, just get Provocation, and I don't think you'll ever turn back. Now, for R, I personally like for my R key to be away, because I have my 3 middle fingers on QWE, and for R to be away, so I can't fat finger it, for example, or accidentally hit it. I would want to use something on a large cooldown, and something that's a lot bigger and meaningful of a skill. So to me, Wrath of the Berserker fits this perfectly. This alone costs 50 Fury, and it's on a 2-minute cooldown. That's fine. For 15 seconds you gain 10% increased critical hit chance, 25% increased attack speed, 20% increased dodge chance, and 20% increased movement speed. And the only rune you'd pretty much always want to use is pretty much a no-brainer, is Insanity. It essentially doubles your damage. You add all of your modifiers and buffs and debuffs and whatnot onto yourself, and then you just double it, so to speak. So yeah, so if I typically, for example, crit for 100,000 damage, if I pop this and do the exact same crit, you'd crit for 200,000. For heavy DPS Barbarian, which I typically am trying to go for, this is mandatory, because you have great DPS alone, but you pop this, not only a beast for 15 seconds, you double your damage, you double your whole DPS output for 15 seconds. Another thing that a lot of people seem to overlook this ability, especially since it doesn't look that good, since it's on a 2-minute cooldown and it costs 50 Fury, is this is a CC immunity for the whole duration, for the whole 15 seconds. You can't be nightmared, you can't be frozen, or any kind of CC, you can't be slowed, anything, knocked back, anything like that. So if you ever see my gameplay of me playing Barbarian, if I ever come up with an elite or a champion pack with frozen or knockback or nightmarish, anything like that, I would, and if Wrath of Berserker's up, I will use it, of course, because you can just stick to them like glue and constantly dish out huge DPS, and you can never be CC'd. And yeah, you can't be jailed as well, so they can't kite you around with that. You can just stick to them like glue. And this also breaks CC. If you're frozen and you have the Fury and it's not on cooldown, you can pop it, it breaks the Fury, it breaks the jail, it breaks the Nightmare, it breaks any CC, and you can just go nuts on them really. So this ability to me is worth it, and 2 minutes doesn't really seem long, because that's about the time you'll typically get between each elite mob, which is the only reason, unless you're versing a boss of course, you'd want to use Wrath of the Berserker. You wouldn't want to use it against trash mobs. Now for passives, I'd use Ruthless. Since I'm going a DPS build, I'd want Ruthless, which gives you 5% crit chance and 50% crit damage. That alone is quite nice. Flat, you don't need to work for it, you just slap it on and it gives you, free crit chance and free crit damage. Not too much else to say, but it personally helps a lot. Second one would be Weapons Master. Depending on what weapon you have in your main hand, you gain a bonus. So for swords and daggers, it's 15% increased total damage. For maces and axes, you get 10% crit chance. For pole arms and spears, it's 10% attack speed. And for mighty weapons, it's 3%. It's 3 extra fury per hit. I'm using a mace right now, which I'll just show you. That's it right there. And now, yes, I have a mighty weapon in my offhand, but this passive only affects your main hand, and your main hand is your right arm, or on the screen, the left one on your character sheet. So for this, I'd be getting the 10% crit chance. Another one I've considered is a sword for the 15% increased damage, but I find the 10% crit chance to be, of course, not as consistent, because it is still a chance, but better for my character overall, because it's based upon crit. And lastly, which this gets changed quite a bit, but I've been sticking with this one, Berserker Rage, sorry. When you're at full Fury, you will deal 25% increased damage. So yet again, another percent increased damage, which is what I really like, and there's quite a few things in Barbarian that gives percent additional damage. So this gives 25%, Insanity, Wrath of the Berserker gives 100%, Marauder's Rage gives 30%, and full 5 stacks of Maniac will give 20%. So that's a lot of percent. Once you have good damage, that's like, I don't know, nearly 200% or so overall percent additional damage. So you're just going to be hitting stupidly hard. But the only bad thing, of course, with the Berserker Rage is you have to be at maximum Fury. And I try to not get additional Fury from items. So I don't think I have any. Yeah, 100 Fury. 100 Fury is a base Fury at all levels. But of course you can boost it up with belts, and I think mighty weapons can give you max Fury as well. So if you're going to use Berserker Rage, try to keep it at 100 Fury. Don't get additional, because it's just going to be that slightly bit harder to get that Fury up to max to actually use this passive. Now, the only bad things being, of course, it's purely damage. These are all purely damage passives. A lot of people use Superstition, which is defense, Tough as Nails, which is defense, and Nerves of Steel, which is also defense. And of course it costs, for example, I have Fury costs, Battle Rage costs Fury, and so does Wrath of Berserker. That's 70 Fury. But I've noticed that it's easy and quick, especially if you have lots of mobs around you, to get maximum Fury again. Even if I pop Battle Rage, even if I pop Wrath of the Berserker, I can easily get 100 max Fury quickly, especially since getting attacked generates Fury, casting Warcry generates Fury, Revenge arguably does give you Fury, because if you hit enemies you gain Fury depending on how many you hit. Frenzy of course is 3 Fury per attack, and Furious Charge is 15 per enemy hit. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing I'd ever change would be Berserker Rage for perhaps Nerves of Steel, but I personally don't think I have much more armor. To me, all resistance is much more valuable, and there's no all resistance passive. And that 25% extra damage is quite huge. Once you hit 100 Fury in a battle, it's quite a good difference if you pay attention to it. I've seen people use Bloodthirst, but I personally don't like it, because that would also be cut down by 80%, so it only gives you 0.6% lifesteal. unless that isn't affected by the Inferno or the difficulty diminishing returns, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it is diminished or cut down, because I've tried this before and I seriously could not see a difference. But hey, just as playing on passives, like you can't. I personally suggest not picking all 3 defense abilities every single time. I'd suggest trying different things, trying different passives. Like this one right here seems decent. As long as there are 3 enemies around you within 8 yards, all of your damage is increased by 30%. That alone is quite good. But I personally, enemies don't live long enough around me for me to justify picking this. And 8 yards isn't that big. It's like a small melee radius. And revenge will just kill all those enemies anyways. So there's not much point. But yeah, that's pretty much my essential skill setup every single time. Very few changes. I personally don't use leap anymore. Another thing I'd like to speak about, hardcore versus softcore, and charge versus leap. Charge is quite buggy, where if you're trying to go up a hill, or if you hit a pile of bricks, or there's some just terrain glitch for some unknown reason, you will just stop there and you can't go through every single type of enemy. I'm not too sure exactly which ones you can't go through, but you can't go through every enemy, and you can easily get stuck and bugs out, and it's a bit inconsistent in that way. So if you die because of a failed charge, in softcore, no big deal. It's got to pay a few K for repairs, but on hardcore you can't afford to have that, because if you're dead, you lose everything on your character. So leap would be the much more favourable choice, because it's much more consistent. You pretty much always leap on your cursor within a reasonable distance, of course, and as long as you're not up against a wall or something or other. So leap would be the more, and especially with Iron Impact, would be the more favourable and attractive choice on hardcore, because it's much more defensive. But do note, it does still pretty much half the damage, but it also slows the enemy's movement speed for 3 seconds. So, and that's also diminished as well if it's a champion. But yeah, leap would be the much more favourable choice. But unless you prefer and trust charge, to use Dreadnought, then Dreadnought would be the better choice if you trust charge enough, because you can regain pretty much full HP from a good or decent, easily pulled off charge. So personally, 8% of your max life at each target hit by charge would be much better than a quadruple armor for 4 seconds. But that's just my opinion. I don't play hardcore. I just play softcore. But yeah, this is pretty much the skill set I've been using to farm Act 1 and Act 2 the whole time. I don't think anything changes. If anything does change, I just change Battle Rage to Ignore Pain with Ignorance is Bliss, because that lifesteal and pretty much invulnerability is just amazing. What's that? You have 3 stacks of Desecrate and an Arcane on you, pop this and you guaranteed to pretty much not die. I've only died once using this, and that was when I had a speck of HP. But yeah, apart from that, if you pop it well, and which is easily to do, you won't die for that 5 seconds. And especially if you keep hitting, as you should be as Barbarian, you can gain some free lifesteal. 4% in Inferno is quite huge, because if I crit for 100k, which is easy for me to do, for example, I'll gain 4% life. Sorry, 4,000 life, not 4%. So, and with Frenzy, this is also great with Frenzy, because Frenzy has a huge attack speed. You can just gain huge lifesteal. I think my lifesteal is decent as it is. Lifesteal, yeah, 5.5. It's okay. I think you can get to 10% lifesteal from items, maybe 12 or 13%. I'm not too sure. But only things I know that give lifesteal are weapons and the belt. I think it's only the Barbarian only belts, mighty belts or whatever they're called. I think they can only give lifesteal. I'm not sure if anything else gives lifesteal, like an amulet. I don't think they do. So yeah, I think it's only weapons and belt. But that doesn't sound right. I think you can get more. But yeah, anyway. Another thing. Yes, I don't think I have any life. Yeah, I have 0 life on hit. You may be wondering, well, how do I sustain myself? I'm melee. I have to have a sustain. For example, monks stack life on hit and attack speed. That's how they get by. You get huge life every single hit, every single second. But yeah, to me, Barbarian is the melee DPS. Monk is the melee tank. But to me, as I just said, Barbarian is the melee DPS. So since you're the melee DPS, instead of life on hit, sure, it would be good with Frenzy because of the huge haste of attack speed. Lifesteal has proven to me, personally, to be better if you're going a more DPS Barbarian, which in my opinion you should be. If you want to go tanky Barbarian, you should have just picked Monk, or just re-roll as a Monk, because they're the tanky melee. Barbarians are the more DPS oriented melee class. But I'm not trying to say go full glass cannon, full DPS, because that's just going to be stupid and you get two shot anyways. It's not going to be boring. You're just going to get frustrated at yourself and probably call me an idiot. But lifesteal is just proven to me, even if you're going hybrid tankiness and DPS, to be just much more better than life on hit. For example, lifesteal I'll have, what does that give? 5%. That's diminished by 80%. I don't know. It gives nearly 1%. For example, 1%. You crit for, let's just say I crit for 100,000. I'll get 1,000 life returned. So that can happen quite a lot. I've even crit for 500,000, for example, with a revenge insanity proc. That can heal you for 5,000. And not only because it's revenge, you heal for 5% of your max life every single enemy hit. I'd highly suggest, especially now since lifesteal is quite cheap, especially compared to life on hit. I reckon life on hit is quite overrated, especially if you're going a DPS oriented spec or build, or playstyle rather. I'd highly suggest you at least try lifesteal, give it a good and legitimate chance, because I highly suggest picking up lifesteal. It's much better than life on hit. Now for my items, I'd also like to go through my items as well, because why not? You know, I share or show you what skills and runes and passives I use, so why not items? That's just half, so I'll show the other half. Since I'm going heavy DPS oriented, you can see I've got decent crit chance and quite high crit damage. The attack speed's pretty low because I don't have much bonus attack speed. Main thing being, apart from Frenzy, is dual wield. Dual wield instantly gives you 15% increased attack speed just for holding two weapons. This is the same for dual one-handed crossbows as well. Or if you have, say, two swords, or say for me a mace and a mighty weapon, you still get that 15% increased attack speed. So of course the main thing of pretty much every character is their weapons, so I'll just go through mine. This is just a mace, of course. Mace in the main hand is, to me, mandatory for the crit chance. You can also use an axe. An axe is the exact same passive, the same crit chance. Just depends on what you want. Maces typically have higher weapon damage, but less attack speed than axes. So it depends if you want a little bit more damage or a little bit more attack speed. Just depends on what you want. To me, I strongly believe you should have your main stat in your weapon, or at least your offhand. So of course Barbarian, it's strength. This mace of mine gives 184 strength, so that alone is 184 armor, 184% increased damage, and that's pretty much it really for Barbarian. It has 71% crit damage, so of course crit damage alone on a crit Barbarian is just good. 2.6% lifesteal, that alone is good, because you know that's your main point of my main point of sustain, and a socket. So for socket, of course, you'll put in an emerald, which has crit damage. My offhand has, which is a mighty weapon. Another thing I like to point out is with the weapons master passive, you only get the bonus or benefit rather of what's in your main hand. So in my main hand, I have a mace or an axe. I get 10% crit chance. But in my offhand, it's a mighty weapon. I do not get that 3 fury per hit. It doesn't count as both offhand and main hand. It's only what's in your main hand, which is this one here. Now for this, it's got decent DPS, but 247 strength, which is quite high. I think the highest on a weapon is 300 of the main stat, and 235 intelligence. So that 225 intelligence isn't much, sure. Especially since it's a mighty weapon. Only barbarians can use it, so it isn't like a wizard can take advantage of this quite high intelligence one-handed weapon. But that's 23.5 all resistance, and I got 2.9% lifesteal and a socket. So of course these two alone will give me 140 crit damage, but if you add on this crit damage, it's another 70, or rather 71%. So it's about 211% crit damage from these two weapons alone. And my passives give me 5% crit chance, 15% crit chance and 50 crit damage. So that alone gives me huge crit chance and crit damage, just alone. For my belts, for my boots rather, is the good base armor, since they're Archons is eye level or effective level 63, which means that they're the highest tier armor or item rather of that slot in the game. You can't get higher than eye level 63. So that means is this has the most potential, or the highest potential to have the best stats. And of course with armor, Archons typically have higher base armor since it's the highest level armor. They have 665 strength or low vitality, decent cold resistance and quite high cold resistance with 12% movement speed. I should really upgrade these since the strength is low, especially the vitality is low. Cold resistance is quite poor. You don't really need cold resistance on a barbarian, but 72 resistance is very good since 80 is the highest you can get on armor, with the exception of amulets, and I think also rings can have 70 or resistance. But for armor, actual armor pieces like boots, it's 80 or resistance, and 12% movement speed is the max you can get on boots. So they're okay, but poor strength and poor vitality. For pants, quite high strength. The highest strength you can get base without sockets on pants is 200. This goes for intelligence and dexterity is 200. 70 intelligence, so that's pretty much 7 or resistance, because 10 intelligence gives you 1 or resistance. 236 vitality. Now vitality is different on pants because the max vitality you can get on pants without sockets is 300. It's the same with torso, chest armor. You can get higher, the cap for vitality is higher than all the main 3 stats, which is dexterity, strength and intelligence. So you can have higher vitality on pants and chest armor than strength and the other main stats. So when you're searching for pants and a torso, chest armor, you can for example search 200 vitality and 100 strength, because instead of the other way around, because if you were to go the other way around, you'll get really expensive results that probably aren't so good, since 200 strength for example is the highest you can get, highest roll, unless it has sockets as well. So instead of having that, you can have 100 strength but 200 vitality, and you can get decent pants for quite a good price. And these have 30 arcane resistance. For barbarians, apart from all resistance, you want physical resistance, fire resistance, and arcane/holy resistance. Desecrate, believe it or not, contrary to popular belief, is actually physical damage. So desecrate is physical resistance. Sadly, I've got low physical resistance because I'm an idiot, and I bought all this gear before I even realised that, or learnt that desecrate is actually physical damage. So that alone is explanatory, and most damage you get dealt is most probably going to be physical, like trash mobs and just base auto attacks will be physical. Fire resistance, of course, fire chains, they're quite deadly, so some extra fire resistance alone will be appreciated. And arcane resistance simply because of arcane enchanted mobs. Those lasers tick stupidly quick and stupidly hard, so arcane resistance you want to probably prioritize the most out of all single resistances, since they're very strong and probably the most threat out of a single affix, I would believe so, when it comes to being a barbarian player against an elite mob. For my belt, quite high strength, decent lowish vitality, decent fire resistance, quite high all resistance, decent magic find, and thorns. Thorns is pretty much whatever. Thorns is honestly a trashy stat, especially in Inferno. It's just, what's the point? It's going to do very, very little, like, negligible damage. It's probably not even worth considering, really. Sadly, my belt doesn't have lifesteal. I should get a belt with lifesteal. It's just, it's not expensive, but it's hard to get a good belt with all resistance, strength, vitality, and lifesteal. It's quite expensive these days, simply because strength, vitality, and all resistance alone on a belt is just going to be lovely for a barbarian to have, like what I have. It's a decent belt. Torso, decent lowish strength, decent vitality, poison resistance, but whatever, you know, poison affix isn't going to do that much. But also I'd like to point out that stacks, and 26 all resistance, which is quite low, and lowish all resistant, low life regen. I think the highest life regen you can get is 499 on a torso, I believe that's it. So yeah, life regen is also very nice, because for lifesteal knife and hit, you actually have to be fighting and attacking for it. But if you have to say kite or run away or take a small breather to get your potion on cooldown, or have to wait for ignore pain to go on cooldown, off cooldown, sorry, or get your charge back up, life regen is consistent, always, it's always there, it's always working, always giving you life every single second, so that's nice. It's torso, it's not that good, I should probably really upgrade it, and it's nothing really special. But base armor is decent, 438 armor for a torso is decent. For my helmet, decent strength, decent intelligence, and high resistance with pickup radius and a socket. Socket on helmet is amazing, because in Inferno you pretty much always want to use, for example, if your melee is an amethyst. Now with the star amethyst, that gives you 15% total life. So if you have, say, 10% life, which you probably shouldn't, you should have more than that, but that will give you 1.5k extra. So 15% extra life overall is nice. It's really good. And each upgrade of of gems will just give you 1% extra. So if I was to get the next tier, which would be a flawless star, I believe, or a perfect star, one of those. Flawless star would then be 16%, and then the next tier will be 17%, and then the tier after that will be 18%. So 18% would be the highest tier, I believe, of a amethyst you can get in the helmet. So yeah, the all resistance is very good, because as I said before, 80 all resistance is the highest you can get, and having some increase gold and health pickup radius is nice, and 7 is the max you can get on a piece of armor, I believe. So having some of it is good, and it's highly underappreciated and underrated. So if you want some, try to buy some now, because it's very cheap to have an item with it. Most people just ignore it. But especially as a melee, that pickup radius is great for health globes if you're fighting, say, elite or champions, because they always drop globes during fights. Even if you kill one and others still alive, they'll still drop health globes, and they can heal for a lot, especially if you have health globe bonus. So I've got 5.8 thousand health globe bonus. That alone, that's 5.8 thousand extra health I'll simply get for picking up a globe. And they heal quite quickly and a lot. I also think they're quite underappreciated during fights, because they heal for a lot. They're probably your main, or at least core sustain when it comes to health sustain in fights. For rings, this one has quite decent strength, some intelligence, some poison resistance, a socket, which of course gives me extra strength, and some crit damage. It's not that good. I should really probably upgrade it with attack speed and crit chance with some decent strength and perhaps vitality. All resistance on rings and amulets are highly expensive, sadly. Other ring is just a little bit of maximum damage, some fire resistance, which is nice, low life after each kill, which is very little really, life after each kill, and decent crit damage and decent crit chance. I think the highest crit damage you can get is 39 on a ring. I think that sounds about right, and the highest crit chance is 6 or so, maybe even more, not too sure. But rings are just like an amulet, just has less of the max roll. For example, an amulet can have, just for theoretical example, because I'm not too sure, an amulet can have 300 max vitality, but a ring can only have 200. So the rings, I think they can have the same stats and affixes and rolls as an amulet, just less, has a smaller cap than the amulets. Speaking of an amulet, this is a decent amulet. I bought quite a while back. Gives some strength, some vitality, arcane resistance, which of course is important. Arcane resistance, high crit damage and high crit chance. I believe the highest crit damage you can get on an amulet is 60, and the highest crit chance is probably like 80. Is probably 8 or so crit chance. So it's a decent amulet, but of course you can get much higher much higher strength and vitality and resistances. Has no attack speed, for example. Another thing I've noticed is if you were to get a ring or gloves or an amulet with attack speed, crit damage and crit chance, it'd be stupidly expensive, so pick 2 instead, like crit damage and crit chance, or attack speed and crit damage, or attack speed and crit chance. Perhaps not 3, because it's going to be very expensive and you probably won't get that many high of a roll with it. So you, instead of having 3 with lowish to mediocre stats or numbers, you can get 2 with a very high at probably a lower price. For braces, I should probably also really upgrade these as well. Is good, high strength, decent intelligence, which, as I keep saying, intelligence, you can't exactly neglect intelligence since it gives you all resistance. Not much, but at least it's something. It's better than nothing. Some vitality, lowish vitality in hindsight. Some poison resistance again. I don't know why I have so much. Probably because it's a cheap stat, I guess. And 63 ore resistance. That's decent ore resistance. And nearly, yeah, that's all my health glow bonus is from that one item. Another thing is braces can have attack speed. I think it's like 6% or something. But I should really try and get braces with attack speed. Or is it crit chance? Yeah, my bad. They can either crit chance or attack speed. And it's pretty sure it's crit chance. Yeah, I'm actually going to say it's crit chance. For gloves, pretty good strength, pretty good vitality, decent fire resistance, okay critical hit damage and critical hit chance. Now gloves like an amulet and rings can have attack speed, crit damage and crit chance, aside from also having strength and vitality and all resistances. It's just gloves are also very expensive because they can have really choice affixes and rolls in that one item, so it's going to be very expensive. So as I suggest, pick crit chance and crit damage, or just 2 of the main 3, which is attack speed, crit chance and crit damage, which is very expensive in the auction house these days. And for shoulders, it's just 186 strength, quite high strength, low dexterity. So I think you probably don't really want dodge on your barbarian because you want that revenge proc, but some is probably okay. Just never go looking for it. Probably try to keep it low. Decent vitality, decent fire resistance, and decent resistance all. So they're nothing special. I'm pretty sure shoulders can't have attack speed, crit chance or crit damage. Pretty sure they can't. So yeah, you just want to stack resistances, strength and life. Another thing I like to point out, which I forgot before, is chest armor and belts can have life percent, like your helmet, or helmets can as well, apart from also having a socket. So you can easily accumulate total life bonus. Since I've only got 15%, which is just from my socketed helmet, which yeah, you can easily rack up a lot of HP, and I've got quite low HP. 38,000 is quite low. I'd personally suggest sticking to 14 to 50,000 if you're in softcore. If you're in the hardcore, you probably want to be hitting more like 70,000 to 60,000 life. You want to be more defensive, more survivability, more sustain, not so much on the damage side. But just remember, for any class you're playing, try to get a balance of what your class offers, which is typically survivability and damage. Try to not go in extremes of one another. For example, demon hunters, try to not go glass cannon demon hunters, because I've, for example, got 170 hours in my demon hunter, but I've stopped playing to play barbarian for many reasons. But many demon hunters go glass cannon. I used to at first with sharpshooter, just nuke the hell out of everything, and then after that, well, just try to kite around and try to get some big crits, or get one shot by even most trash mobs would even one shot me. Ever since I got the Natalia's set, I could now take 3 hits from champions. That makes all the difference, not only in viability and as being a party and solo player, and actually farming and earning items and gold and for your accumulative wealth. It's also more fun as far as Diablo actually goes. Getting one shot all the time can get really tedious and really boring. So yeah, that one shot, from being one shot to a 3 shot, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, even for Barbarian, I highly suggest to not go full tank or full glass cannon. Just try to find a good balance, a good mixture. Like for example, for my strength and vitality, I try to aim for about 2,000-ish strength and 1,000 vitality, maybe 1,200 vitality and 1,900 strength, something like that, since I am lacking vitality in life. But yeah, try to find a balance. Never think and play in extremes like that, because it's really not that fun, in my opinion, of course. But yeah, hey, this is Diablo. You have all the time in the world. You just farm and try stuff and help each other out. So, like, Okay. Yeah, just try everything out. That's all I can really say. Just hell, you're not going to get punished for trying stuff out. Just even if it sounds terrible or looks terrible, like that whirlwind build, the double whirlwind with sprint and whirlwind. Everyone thought that was a joke at first, just to level up. It was, oh, that's only good to level up at first. But hey, now a lot of barbarians are actually using it to actually farm Inferno, like Act 3 Inferno. So yeah, just try various stuff. If you think it might work, just try various stuff. Just do it. Because one person and I stuck together for going dual wield DPS lifesteal barb, and now we're actually turning heads and changing opinions of people for going dual wield DPS lifesteal barb. Like, we're practically the only two that did it and actually spoke about it, and everyone would call us trolls and say we're bad, you know, saying we're stuck in Act 1 Inferno, but he farms Act 3 just fine. I farm Act 2, you know, when I want to, Act 1, maybe even Act 3 if I want to, just fine. But yeah, like, we're really changing opinions and people are loving it. I'd highly suggest, you know, trying dual wield DPS lifesteal barbarian. To me, it's the most fun. I've got a level 60 wizard, demon hunter, barbarian, and a monk. Level 42 witch doctor, but no one really plays witch doctors, unfortunately, because they are quite a weak class. But yeah, I personally find barbarian to be the most fun. Monk is very fun as well, but barbarian is just that little bit extra more fun, especially since it's hard to buy for monk. But anyway, I'll stop ranting. I'm probably killing a lot of topics for when I actually show a farm video, which I shall later on. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you actually learned some things from this, and do try some of these tactics and things out. If you have anything to share with us and me, send a PM or comment, you know, feel free to. You can just, there's no restrictions unless it's like racist or sexist or just blatantly rude or troll or whatever, of course. But hey, if you got any opinions, just don't feel as if you're gonna be flamed or think you're stupid for saying it. Just share. I'll try it, even if you want. You say, hey, Dopebear, I got, you know, this spec here, you know, I've tried it and no one else, you know, really knows about it or thinks I'm, you know, trolling about it. But I'd really appreciate it if you make a video on it and tried it and gave your honest thoughts and improvements, you know, cons and pros, you know, really appreciate that. Yeah, I'd do that for you. Like, just send across any builds, any kind of things you want me to test, go for it, because hell, why not? There's no reason not to. I'm here to help and entertain you guys, so just send anything across and help other people. Go for it. But yeah, aside from that, I'll be making a farming video for Act 1 soon, quite soon, maybe within the next few days, depending on how it goes and if anything emergency happens, which I highly doubt it will. Yeah, which of course I'll be playing my Barbarian in Act 1. I'll be showing, then of course playing through the whole run, my typical run, where I go, where I don't go and why. And yeah, just typical findings. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll just try to make more videos, and just please ask if you ever want to see or ask more videos of anything specific, even just go for it. You know, don't feel as if you hold back, and I'll make a video, I'll talk to you, go for it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and you know, keep on farming. See you later on.